rush hour at DXB, where Emirates airline has brought in all the big wide-body jets, and now they're getting ready, transferring passengers, and soon they'll disperse to all points around the globe. I could stand on the roof here at the headquarters building and look at these planes all day. Emirates is one of those fascinating airlines, not only because it has wide-bodied jets, a fleet of 777s and A380s, but it's the largest airline in the world and the way it's disrupted so much of international aviation. Now the challenge is geopolitical, higher oil prices, and an airline structure that has to be reconnected to make money in the future. I discussed this with Sir Tim Clark, the President and Chief Executive of Emirates. Sir Tim has been at the heart of this airline since day one.
The last financial year was lower than we would have liked for reasons well outside our control, and there were many of those. But the management was required by the shareholder to basically get its act together and rather look forward than look back as to what would happen, and that caused us to go after costs. It caused us to go after the flying program, to look very closely at what we were doing with regard to use of the assets. It caused us also to look at our internal cost structures, our HR costs, etc. So the team then came together and said, like, we can't carry on like this. We've really got to improve things.
I was fascinated to see your parking planes. Mm-hmm. You're parking planes because there's not enough pilots. Or even if that's an extreme position, the lack of pilots is constraining your growth now.
No, I would say we have a short-term issue. This summer gave us a temporary problem where the supply line of pilots to match the flying program wasn't quite where it should have been. That has been resolved. So by October, November, December this year, our pilot situation is resolved and we have our full flying program intact.
Fuel prices, as the price goes now north of $70 for Brent or WTI, that's described as the sweet spot for the producers. It's an acceptable spot for yourselves, but it's starting to get to the pain point.
Yes, we've been there before, Richard. Don't forget, we were up at 140 at one point.
Yeah, and everybody was crying.
And they were crying. But, you know, actually the whole industry managed, there were casualties. And the higher the fuel price, the more likely there will be casualties coming along in the next year or so. But we're better at managing the fuel price higher than we used to be. I'm a firm believer that the supply calculus has changed, that we have geopolitical issues that are forcing the price of oil up temporarily at the moment, that eventually the supply push, given that the United States is now a net exporter of oil through the shale and gas production, producing 10.8 million barrels a day, which is more than Saudi Arabia produces. So in the time that we've been going through all of this, the supply situation has changed. Ergo, unless the global economy ticks up at 6–8%, it's likely that we'll see some kind of equilibrium. Where do I think it would be? It should be between 50 and 60.
Geopolitical issues in the region, whether it be instability because of Syria, whether it be because of Qatar, whether it becomes the whole Middle East question, you're running an airline in the heart of it all, where there are some very real issues at the moment.
Agreed. But we carried a lot more passengers than we did last year, despite what's been going on. The industry as a whole has upticked about 9%. So you've got 300 million people travelling by air, more than we had over last year, at a time when the geopolitical situation has been a little bit fraught. So what I'm saying is, irrespective of that, there are a lot of green shoots coming through, not the least of which is what's going on in Dubai at the moment. We've got Expo coming along in a couple of years' time. The economy is moving, despite there are sort of fits and starts. But if you look around you, the place is growing quite rapidly. And so demand for our flights, not only out across our network, but from the United Arab Emirates, is growing.
I want to just touch Qantas. The Perth-London, which I was on, it's a hell of a flight. It's a very long flight. Are you at risk of the hub here becoming marginally less relevant as ultra-long hauls start to move in?
And it's an interesting one, Richard. I had the same question in 1988-89 when the 747-400 came along, and they said the hub will be irrelevant because everybody's going to go non-stop with the 747-400 to the east and over the west. And look what happened. Providing the global economy grows and providing that the value proposition in terms of air travel remains a good one, long-haul twin operations into multiple airports, not necessarily the big hubs, will be part of the paradigm change in air travel. So you'll get a lot of these twins flying. It could be Perth, Bordeaux. It could be Perth, Dusseldorf. It could be Perth, Naples. What would that do for us? That's not a problem. It's a pie that's growing. We're always optimistic. The fact that you offer more, whether it's us or other carriers, means that more people travel. And that's good for the industry. One way or the other, we will get a benefit from it. Dubai will remain a very, very powerful international hub. Make no mistake.
Emirates Airlines remains one of the most fascinating in the world, not only because of its unique fleet structure, all wide-bodied giant aircraft, and the fact that it's the largest airline in the world, but the reality is it has been a disruptor for the past 2 decades, and now has to decide how to disrupt for the next 2.